Gero here for Umbra Games with a review of God Eater 2 Rage Burst. Played on PlayStation 4 for the review, also available on PS Vita. If you aren't familiar with the name, you're definitely not alone. God Eater is an anime series with a corresponding video game release, originally on PSP in 2011 in the US, God Eater Burst. A remaster of this game is included as a digital download with new copies of God Eater 2 Rage Burst released in August of 2016. God Eater 2 tells the story of a group of teen soldiers called the Blood Unit, who have the necessary genetics to operate weapons known as God Arcs, which in a post-apocalyptic world full of giant monsters called Aragami, they become a necessity. The game has a couple of different HQ hubs from which you will select a mission and embark into the desolate wilds to take these terrorizing creatures down. Each mission usually contains one or two of these beasts that move around a relatively small, lettered map area, and you're rewarded with parts of the monster by using your God Arc to devour them upon death. You can find other items in the area by looking for shiny spots as well. Once a monster is defeated, you'll return to headquarters, generally have to talk to someone for a small cutscene, and the next story mission will then become available. You can replay any mission you've completed before if you're looking for more Aragami parts from the creatures featured there. Now you control a custom-made character and interact with several others in the group, taking up to 3 AI-controlled associates in the battle with you at a time. You don't level up in a traditional sense, but instead use your gathered ingredients to construct new weapons and shields that increase your basic stats. You can pick your melee weapons from a handful of options, including hammers, swords, and charged spears, and you can also equip a ranged weapon like a blast gun or a shotgun. Most of the game's actions require the use of the R1 button, which felt a little strange at first. Tapping R1 by itself transforms your melee weapon into gun form. Holding R1 and moving will allow your character to dash. R1 plus circle will materialize your shield, blocking most incoming damage. You can attack with both the square and triangle buttons with the melee weapon, but the combo variety is fairly limited. Circle will do a quick dodge while holding a direction, otherwise is used to pick items off the ground while the analog stick is in the neutral position. You can jump with X and also attack in the air with the melee buttons. Also while in melee combat, you can hold L1 to lock onto a target in front of you, which will spin your camera as required. When you switch your weapon to range mode, that targeting reticle changes to a wider one and allows you to free aim. You can fire bullets as long as you have energy in your OP bar, the green one underneath your life. There are various ways to replenish that supply, including doing melee damage to your foes. All non-ranged attack options will deplete your stamina bar, which refills while in place or walking. Now, if you should die while on the battlefield, it will take 5 endurance to continue, and if 30 seconds passes while you're passed out, you can respawn. But other characters can and will often revive you, allowing you to get up much quicker and on the spot where you passed. Now, while we did consume a bit of endurance, neither Hercules nor myself ever seemed in danger of losing all endurance at any point of the campaign. You have a dozen or so consumable item options you can take with you on missions as well. You can hold up to 20 small health pills and 10 larger ones. There are detox pills to cure the poison status effect, and there are also offensive consumables like flash grenades and elemental traps. We rarely found the offensive ones worth the time and effort, as flash grenades, while handy stopping enemies' attack while they're winding up, the effects only last a second or two, and with traps sometimes maybe 4 seconds. So this is where the simple explanation of this game ends. God Eater 2 uses a ridiculous number of systems that actually require some pretty serious reading of an FAQ or a dive into the game's database. But even then, it didn't feel like that fully explained everything we needed to know. We'll start with the God Arc's ability to devour. Holding triangle in your melee form, or pressing R1 plus triangle in the middle of a combo will unleash a black being from your weapon that will lash out and bite whatever's directly in front. If you do this while your target is alive, it will produce an Aragami bullet. This bullet will often be aligned with the enemy's specific element, burn, frost, shock, or divine. When in gun form, pressing the triangle will shoot this bullet at an enemy, but if you press R1 plus triangle in gun form, you can shoot your teammates to boost their combat ability temporarily up to 3 levels. When your target is finally down, and you use your God Arc's ability to devour, that's how you obtain your loot. Next we'll talk about equipment crafting. For the most part, crafting is pretty straightforward. New recipes seem to open up through story progression. The story progression also yields new types of Aragami, which provide different drops, so it's moot to argue whether it's one or the other. Once you have the necessary items, you can create your new gear. Gear comes with an X, dash, or 0 in each of the 4 elemental spots, showing you its strength or weakness. Now, where this begins to deviate a bit, though, is through acquisition of abandoned God Arcs, of which you're awarded at least 3 at the end of every mission. These arc parts come as one of the various melee types, shield or gun, and those can be applied to add skills to your weapon. Most seem to have 4 slots. Now, these skills are all over the place, from boosted melee damage to quicker item consumption to status effects resistance to the ability to see an enemy's health. Each of these skills also have a level from 1 to 10 that increase in effectiveness the higher they are. They do accumulate if you add a level 3 and a 4, for example, to 7. Sometimes these pieces will also have a plus integer on their description. When this part is applied to a piece of equipment, it raises the overall strength of the weapon permanently up to plus 30. If you have a bunch of junk parts, you can combine quite a few at a time for a chance at super strong ones. Once a part has been applied to a weapon, it can't be removed. You can also gather Aragami parts to upgrade weapons into another form, but they always seemed locked until the next tier of weapons was available, and it just never made sense in any of our particular situations to take this path instead. Next, melee weapons do have limited combos, but your combat variety can be increased through the use of blood arts. Usage of that weapon type is required to open these arts, but the more you use it, the higher the levels can get up to 4 each. You can equip one blood art at a time, but you slowly unlock others by performing specific actions for them in battle. This game does feature online cooperative play with up to 4 players. Any slots you don't fill with human players, you can take various members of the blood unit to fill in those gaps. As you complete missions, you gain gap points, as well as AP, which can be used to unlock non-player characters' abilities to further aid you in battle. There end up being a dozen or so companions, and sometimes you're locked in a mission to a specific couple. As you progress through the story, you can unlock single-player only episodes for these characters, which open up new abilities for you to select from. You purchase these abilities using a combination of the gap and AP points that you received. Now you eventually open a support tier as well, letting players that aren't in battle contribute to the foray with bonuses to stamina or armor, for example, at specific time frames. Now you're also rewarded at the end of each mission in various ways. Some bonuses granted for how quickly you completed your objective, some on how much endurance you have left. Depending on whom you brought with you, you can get effects to change the outcome, like ignore endurance for rewards or get bonus God Arc pieces. So, as you can see, there are quite a few layers of complexity for a game where the combat ends up getting pretty repetitive. Most missions wind down in under 5 minutes, and the first several are fairly simplistic, having you take out a single target. There are some pretty unique creature designs, and while each type threatens you with a handful of moves, unfortunately the mechanics to those stay mostly the same. You can break what they call creatures bonds, basically smashing a body part, making it inoperable, and that has a chance to provide additional rewards upon mission completion, but it never seemed to affect the flow of battle, which seems like a missed opportunity as a strategy layer. I mean, if you break the giant scorpion's tail, for example, it shouldn't be able to strike with it anymore. While the game does have a lot of sometimes awkward anime vibes to it, I found myself being quite interested in the story arc of the campaign. It took a few twists, some of which were easy to predict, and others that kinda weren't. They weren't afraid to kill characters, continually introduce new ones, and show the conflict between rivaling personalities. There are a few songs that, of course, one of the characters has to be a teen idol and performs, but that's starting to seem like par for the course for a lot of Japanese games. One major frustration comes through with the elemental imbuement of weapons. A lot of mission descriptions will tell you which Aragami you'll be facing, and then you can run to the database and check their strengths and weaknesses, but on a couple of missions throughout the game, Hercules and myself found ourselves with the wrong weapon, forcing blue damage on the enemy, showing that they're strong to it, and causing hits in the single digits. Once you've made this mistake, we didn't see a clean way to abandon the mission, and you can't change your loadout mid-mission either. The differences in attack power of your weapon options and their availability often had you picking ones that were just of one element or another for its attack power, and the element is innate with that weapon. It's not something you can freely change. One other frustration is a lack of sorting options when looking through your inventory or crafting parts. You can purchase some items by obtaining tickets received as battle rewards, but seeing what you need on the crafting screen and then flipping back to exchange those tickets for the items and having to comb through a list of hundreds with no ability to sort alphabetically started to kill our desires to be on the active lookout for upgrade possibilities. Now you can definitely tell graphically that this game was an attempted remaster of an older game. The enemy designs, as I said, were good, and some of the weapons are neat, but overall in appearance, the game is fairly simple. The game's musical score is adequate, but sometimes had a nice, peaceful piano tune going on during moments of tension that was noticeably unfitting for the current scene. God Eater 2 Rage Burst does include a lot of the extras above and beyond what the original version of God Eater 2 released in Japan. There are hard modes of existing missions you can complete, special missions available occasionally after completing a regular one, and special Rage Burst missions. Free missions open up as you complete story ones too, and even after beating the 90 story mission campaign, there's an additional 70 to 80 mission story arc you can continue with. There are tens of hours of gameplay here if you so desire, but we found that 30 for completing the main mission and little else was enough for both of us. God Eater 2 Rage Burst offers a ton of combat, hindered somewhat by its repetitive nature. A ton of complex systems for character and weapon customization and advancement, including several crafting systems. A solid, interesting story with likable characters you can care about. Some rough graphics for this generation, but with interesting creatures and weapons. And solid cooperative play up to 4 players. Rated as a mission-based action RPG, God Eater 2 Rage Burst lands at a 62 out of 100 on a true 1 to 100 scale, with 50 being average. This is Gero for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe for notifications of new videos, or follow me on Twitter @UmbraGames.